Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Let's Bet It. It is Friday, day 2 of March Madness. I'm Jared Smith. We got Mark Sino hanging out here as well. And Jim Root coming on in just a few moments. Big college basketball day, obviously. Yesterday was fun. Great job by the squad. 3-0 on plays of the day. Mark, a little sweat there for you at the end, Catamounts.
Okay, that's why I work out.
Was there. They were right there for pretty much most of the game.
It was a sweat. It was worthwhile, though. It's always good, even if it's a sweat, when the handicap comes the way you expect it to go and you end up cashing a ticket. So thank you very much, Vermont.
Yeah, Catamounts get across the finish line. Lauren Jabara also had a bit of a fortunate comeback with her Michigan Wolverines, but the Wolverines are indeed heading to round 2 of the tournament. We'll get a fun matchup with them tomorrow, and we'll have plenty of time to dissect that. But first, let's talk a little bit of the NFL, and let's get this ridiculous story yesterday out of the way so we can give college hoops our full and undivided attention as it deserves here on day 2. Davante Adams, it's every single day with the NFL. Like, not even March Madness can pull our attention away from the NFL. But Davante Adams makes a very interesting decision yesterday, decides to sign with the Las Vegas Raiders. Massive contract. I don't know what the exact specs of it are. I think it was 5 years, but it was a lot of money, a lot of years, a lot of commitment. But he made the conscious decision to play with Derek Carr over Aaron Rodgers. Packers odds dropped in the futures market yesterday, as expected. Walk me through this one, Mark, because honestly, I have a lot of questions about his decision here.
Well, again, I think Green Bay knew that it needed some level of a reset with Aaron Rodgers, probably, looking at maybe retirement here in the near future, and wanted to stockpile picks. And so they move off of Davante Adams and they send him over to the Raiders, who desperately need to keep up with the rest of their division. Now, I have long been saying to everybody that the Raiders have been undervalued. They were one of my teams last year that I picked to make the playoffs at plus 370 before the season started. They got me home. Derek Carr is a criminally underrated quarterback in this league. Go look at his numbers from last year and how good they are. He was top 5 in the league in passer rating. It's the guy who had over 30 touchdowns, less than 8 interceptions. I mean, this is a guy that when you give him these level of weapons is going to be able to compete at a high level in the AFC West. I understand everybody thinks it's the Chiefs division. I understand Russell Wilson is there now. And Joey Herbert is amazing, right? Justin Herbert, what did I say? Joey? Anyway,
it's his brother. It's his younger brother.
Yeah, it's his younger brother. He'll be in the NFL soon. But Justin Herbert is they look at Derek Carr as the 4th best quarterback in that division.
Yeah.
And that may be fine, but that doesn't mean this team can't be competitive. They do have a better defense now. They have one of the better pass rushers in the league in Max Crosby. They're filling out this roster. Now, does it seem crazy to pay your quarterback, your wide receiver, and a pass rusher all that kind of money? Maybe, but that's kind of how NFL teams are built. I love what the Raiders are doing. I still think they have the longest odds to win the division. I'd take them. They have long odds to win the Super Bowl. I'd take them. They have long odds to make the playoffs. I'd take them. I love what the Raiders are doing. Call me biased. I'm not even a Raiders fan. I don't care. I just like the way that team is being built right now.
Well, you got the Super Bowl in Vegas in 2 years. You've got a lot of buzz around that stadium. 2 years ago when it first opened, there were no fans in it because of the pandemic. Last year we had fans. It was a very exciting year for Vegas. Obviously, the end of the season was very weird with that last game against the Chargers, and things came down to the last moment, literally, of overtime. And we'll see what they build on this year. You're right, 7-1 to win the AFC West, 40-1 to win the Super Bowl. These are odds on DraftKings. I'm sure if you shop around, you might be able to find a better price somewhere. But there is certainly a lot of buzz around this Vegas team. All right, let's move now into college hoops because let's be honest, that's why you're all here today. Before we get started, I want to mention the giveaway. We gave away money yesterday because we hit our PODs. We're doing the same thing today, I think, but also giving away $100 each tournament game day. So that obviously is today, to one person who can correctly pick a select set of game spreads, totals, or props. If you get all your picks right, you'll be entered to win. New slate of games to pick from each game day and with chances to win each time. So use the link in the bio, the Pickswise bio, to sign up now for daily cash prizes. And again, thanks for joining us today. This is Let's Bet It. Subscribe, podcast, Apple, Google Play, all that fun stuff. But let's get into what we saw yesterday first, Mark. Let's break down a little bit of the madness because it was madness. First 4 favorites went 3-1 against the spread. Favorites yesterday did pretty well, 9-7 against the number, 12-4 straight up. But there were some upsets. St. Peter's, Richmond. We had some bracket busters yesterday. Walk me through what you saw and some of your takeaways from day one.
Well, if you go back and replays yesterday's show, you and I actually had mentioned St. Peter's catching the points, and I told you what a great defense that they were. And I even said that St. Peter's defense is eerily similar to that of Tennessee, which was able to check Kentucky, which is why I stayed off that game altogether. When you get that kind of disparity, there's always a blowout that's possible, right? So these big spreads in these number 1 and number 2 seed games, they're usually just stayaways for me because I can't eliminate a lot of the variance. And you saw it with St. Peter's and the way their defense played, really slowing down Kentucky for the first, regulation 40 minutes. And then, of course, you end up in overtime. So credit to St. Peter's, man. I love the Metro Atlantic. It's a conference that I went to college in back in the day. So this is a really solid mid-major conference. They've gotten tournament wins, of worth in several years. Iona's won a couple of tournament games for a couple of years. Niagara won a couple of tournament games here and there back in the day. So this is not a conference that's necessarily a rollover like some of these other smaller ones out there. But St. Peter's played great. Their defense is legit. It's really, really tough. And they can slow down anybody. So let's see what happens around number 2 for those guys.
Fascinating game. They're catching 8.5 against Murray State. And we'll have plenty of time to dissect that game tomorrow. I want to give you a shout out, former college cheerleader. The cheerleader stole the show in that Indiana St. Mary's game yesterday. That was one of my favorite moments from yesterday. Ball gets stuck in between the rim or the backboard and the shot clock up there. And the referees looking up there what do I do? A couple of the St. Mary's players wanted to get up on a chair, and the ref was like, no, don't do that, because if you fall and you hurt yourself, that was really bad. But, of course, hey, cheerleaders saved the day.
To the rescue, man. I mean, listen, we are an underrated bunch of athletes, and we're always there when you need us. So if you ever need some extra length, some extra height, little toss hands extension to get you right home. So congratulations. Jared, I got to tell you, I was so happy, warmed my heart. I was genuinely smiling with a little tear in my eye that cheerleaders came to save the day. So, yes.
It was a really fun day. I think, if you had Kentucky in your bracket, I had them in the championship. I know a bunch of us had them in the title, winning it all. Obviously, the bracket gets busted. But, before we get to Jim, we'll kind of rehash. To me, the bracket has become this outdated dinosaur of gambling. It used to be the only way that we could really gamble on the tournament 10, 15 years ago. Now, to me, the bracket is a novelty. I don't put any money in bracket pools anymore. Actually, this was the second straight year that I've, kind of gone away from that. Just because of how volatile this tournament is, it's naive of us to think that we can actually win big money. Now, of course, people do win big money on it. But the odds of you winning your bracket pool is very slim, especially in the bigger ones. And I just think betting the tournament, and you could bet your bracket. You could say, hey, I think this team's going to go to the Final Four, and you bet that team to make the Final Four. And you have a much better chance to either hedge out of it or make some flexible, opportunities when you bet middles, if they're underdogs at some point. I just think the bracket, if you're wasting and putting big money on your bracket pools every year, I think you should use that money to gamble, because I think you have a better chance to actually come out on top.
Yeah, well, again, I mean, there's a lot less chance, I think, involved in picking 1 or 2 specific games. There are value or ways you can eliminate variance, whereas opposed to generally in the entire tournament, it's hard to eliminate variance. I mean, look at, some of us called upsets yesterday. I was on Richmond over Iowa. I told you they were going down. And so that one ends up getting home. You can look at some of these other games that really kind of went completely different. I mean, look, Creighton should have lost that game, right? I was on San Diego State.
That game ruined my night. Yeah, I would have had an explosive day if San Diego State held on to that game. That was my toughest beat of the day, no doubt.
It was, and again, at the last minute, I told you yesterday, I flipped on to Providence, and they, never really were in doubt against South Dakota State. It got close. They kept give South Dakota State credit. They kept it, but that was a team that was one of the best 3-point shooting teams in America. I think they're number 1 coming into the tournament. They could knock down a shot yesterday from deep. I mean, that stuff just sort of happens. And so, oh, by the way, I'll let you know, I'm doubling back on Providence again in round number 2.
Oh yeah, no, Providence now with Richmond
they're going to keep seeing these short numbers, and I'm going to keep hammering them until it goes the other way.
I held off on the money line on Providence yesterday just because I had a feeling that we'd have a better chance to fade them later in the tournament, and I didn't want to be the guy that bet on them the day that they lost. I want to bet against Providence. But I don't think I can bet against them against Richmond. Although I will say this, Richmond has that buzz to them.
A little swagger.
Fascinating. And the Atlantic 10, I think, is going to prove themselves very capable today, and we'll get to that Davidson Michigan State game a little bit later. All right, let's bring in Jim Root because we have 16 games on the card today, and I'd be remiss if we didn't at least mention all 16 of them. I have 12 total bets today, and Jim, I know that for you that probably sounds light. How was your day yesterday?
It was okay. I wouldn't say it was good.
Okay.
I just looked through the shot quality results from yesterday, and I would have won about 7 more bets had things stayed true to shot quality. So I'm hoping that's an indicator that things will go a lot better today.
You know, the shot quality thing is tough because it almost puts you on tilt because you're like, I should have won 5 more bets, and you look at your final card for the day, and you're like, what the hell just happened? All right, let's start out Ohio State, Loyola-Chicago. This game, we've talked about this game before, Jim, and I think the line is starting to steam a little bit towards Ohio State. To me, it's those injuries to Zed and Young that are going to be kind of the difference here. I saw yesterday neither of them participated in shoot around. We'll see what that means. But what are you hearing on the injuries to Zed Key and Kyle Young? And do you think Loyola is worth the play for you? If they play, is Loyola play? If they don't play, what's kind of the angle there?
Yeah, I love Loyola either way. Doesn't matter to me if they play. I think Zed Key likely gives it a go. He's dealing with an ankle. That's a little more easier to play through. Young has a concussion. I mean, that's you're in or you're out with a concussion. So I'm guessing he's out, but I just trust the experience of this Loyola team. So much experience in the tournament. And I just don't buy Ohio State's defense at all. I think they're going to have a hard time with the continuity of Loyola. So yeah, it's Ramblers for me, and I may or may not be my play of the day later. We'll see.
Look, I was all over Loyola. Again, I thought all 3 of Michigan State, and Ohio State were all going to lose in their first round. So far, more for 1 on that one. But again, Jared, you got to follow the money sometimes. And when you start to see reports of where the money is and how much of it's on Loyola, and you start to see sharp bettors come back in on Ohio State, this is a spot where I don't disagree with what Jim said. I'm just going to pass on it. I get an uneasy feeling, and I'll take a no bet on this one and sit back and watch and hope, at least for the bracket's sake, that I was right for Loyola, because I'm not going to lie. I did try to go back into a couple of brackets to see if I could switch over to Ohio State because I got a little bit nervous when I was following the money. I guess you're not allowed to do that. Just goes to show you how much I haven't filled out a bracket in years. Like online, I thought I could go back and change it before the game. So no,
bracket's locked.
Yeah,
the cross arm emoji
all locked in. So I'm riding with Loyola in the brackets, just not with my wallet.
Yeah, I think Loyola from a betting perspective, it gives me pause because of the money coming in on Ohio State. But from a matchup perspective, this Ramblers team fits the profile. Top 25 adjusted defense, top 50 adjusted offense, top 10 in EFG percentage. I mean, those are the metrics that we use to grade these teams. And the Ramblers are an experienced bunch. I think they have more offensive talent than the team that made that run a few years ago. They've got obviously Williamson, the holdover from that team, but also the Schweiger kid from Princeton, the grad transfer, who I think is an absolute stud. They've got more pop on the outside than before. And Ohio State's sputtering right now. They've really struggled down the stretch. They've lost 4 of their last 5. And when you've got dudes on your team, 3-4 guys that are shooting 37% from 3, I mean, this Loyola team's known for defense. But again, I think they can score a little bit more than some of the experts might give them credit for, and maybe some of the past teams that Loyola's had that have been successful. So I'll reluctantly, go headwind here with the public and take the Ramblers on the money line. So that's my first play.
Ohio State's only hope is to knock down threes. EJ Liddell and company have to knock down threes. It's what they're good at. It's what they do. If they hit them, they'll score in the high 70s and shouldn't have a problem winning the game. If they don't, they're going to struggle for 40 minutes.
Yeah, and I think when you look at what Ohio State has been, EJ Liddell's got to be the guy. And I trust Valentine to draw up a scheme on him because, again, the Ramblers defense, just like St. Peter's yesterday, you might not think it based off the conference they play in, but the Moval, I think, a little bit more prestigious than the MAAC. But they are a top 30 defensive efficiency team, and they make your best player look bad. All right, Auburn, Jacksonville State, 215. We already had a 215 upset in the SEC yesterday, so why not another one today, right? Jacksonville State, man, this is such a weird spot for Jacksonville State situationally, Jim. They weren't even supposed to be here. Bellarmine's situation because of their transition forced the Gamecocks, who, by the way, play in Alabama, not Florida, into this game. And I'm telling you on your race to 15, I don't know this Gamecocks team that well because I didn't watch them later on in their conference tournament. I know Auburn could be really inconsistent. Early start time. I could see Jacksonville State getting off to a fast start here.
Yeah, that's the hope. Both teams will fire up a ton of threes, and Jacksonville State's just better at knocking them down. They're top 10 in the country. I think 11th in three-point percentage. Auburn will jack them up with the best of them, and Jacksonville State will play very compact on defense. One quick tangent, though. Yesterday, South Dakota State, Vermont, a couple of the really hot shooting dogs that I thought would play well did not at all. So that narrative today with somebody like Jacksonville State, somebody like Colgate, maybe that's not the dogs we should be looking at. Akron and St. Peter's were the ones that are a little bit uglier just in their style, and they hung around with power competition. I don't want to draw too much of a conclusion from that, but maybe it matters.
You bite your tongue. Don't you dare talk about those hot shooting teams. Not all four of them are going to end up. I actually feel better about it now, Jim, because two of those hot shooting teams that came into this thing were supposed to be great. They were bad. The other two should hold the form. Come on, stay with me here.
Both South Dakota State and Vermont won via shot quality yesterday. South Dakota State by 9. So I think the read was
par for the course of Providence, right? Not to go on a tangent. I mean, that's just the theme of their year.
And oh, by the way, had Vermont made their free throws to their season percentage, they win that game. Yeah, I mean, that's where they got killed. 58%
yesterday
from the free throw line. Like watching those guys miss free throws, I was banging my head against the wall.
Yeah, which is definitely part of the shot quality result.
Jim and I are on Jacksonville State race to 15. I got plus 250. That's the DraftKings number. I only put a half a unit on this. Besides that, this game is a pass for me. I think Auburn's better, but their inconsistent backcourt is why I can't lay 15 with them. But Jim, are you going full unit on the race to 15 here? What's your feeling?
I'm going 100 unit on it, Jared.
100 units.
Yeah, I'm going full unit. This one's going to be fun. I think everything sets up for a high variance start to the game, so I'll take the risk.
All right, let's move on. 3-14 matchup, Texas Tech, Montana State. We've talked about this Grizzlies team before, Jim. Up in the big sky, the Sprinkle coach is first of all, elite name. Coach Sprinkle, former player, former Grizzly. And this is a big number for a Texas Tech offense, I think, that struggles to score at times. But besides Montana State's, fresh approach to their game, which Sprinkle brings as the head coach, I don't really there's not much, metrics wise really to love about Montana State, but you really feel that this is a live pooch today.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is a little bit like Akron and St. Peter's yesterday, the more physical team that I'm thinking about it. And New Mexico State was another one like that yesterday, more of a physical underdog. So maybe they can hang around more than I initially gave them credit for. I was always taking plus 15, but for them to actually compete to win, like maybe there's more of a chance of that. You have to be able to score outside the paint against Texas Tech's defense. And they actually do have a few shooters. And Patterson's got to hit a couple. Gazelles, they were hot in the Big Sky final. So I'm hoping we get a little bit more of that today because scoring in the paint against Texas Tech's tough, no matter who you are.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this game, Jim, and I'm actually going to take the Montana State over team total 57.5. This is a team that averages 75 points a game. They're top 40 in America in effective field goal percentage, top 40 in three-point shooting. They're a very good shooting team. And oh, by the way, for as good defensively as they are, the great equalizer for defense is just knocking down shots. And if Montana State can do that, which I think to a certain extent they can, all I'm asking them to do is to get to 60 in this game. That's 15 points off their season average. There's just way too much of it. I get Texas Tech's defense is good, but if you're telling me that they're going to keep Montana State in the 50s, that's like a shocking result. If they keep Montana State in the 50s, they should cover this thing by 10 points easily. Montana State can score too much to be held to that low of a total. When I saw that number, it jumped out at me, and I jumped right on the Montana State over 57.5.
Yeah, to be fair, Montana State hasn't faced a lot of defenses like Texas Tech. Probably.
No, they have not.
They've not been held into the 50s all year. Their lowest total was a 60 against Idaho State back in January. So, that obviously that could have been an aberration or, just an outlier. But this is a Montana State team that is consistently in the 70s. They scored 80 plus in 2 out of the 3 Big Sky tournament games. Listen, Denny Sprinkle is a hell of a coach. We've talked about this Grizzlies team before on the show. We talked about the Big Sky Conference. It's, not one of those upper tier mid majors that we would think that could pull off an upset like this, but but they run a very unique style, and I think Coach Sprinkle's going to have his boys up for this game. So I'm on Montana State. I got 15.5. Jim, you're catching 15, and then Zeno is on the team total Montana State over 57.5 points. So we're all on the Grizzlies in some capacity in this game. All right, another 314, Purdue, Yale. I hate laying a lot of points in any NCAA tournament game. I'm laying 2 favorites today. This is one of them. And I just think Purdue is going to just blitz Yale. Like, I like the Ivy. They've had good results in tournaments past, but there's really only one Ivy in this game, and it's the one for Purdue. And I think he's just going to run up and down on this on this Yale.
You've been waiting all show long to say that, haven't you? You've been waiting all show long to say that.
I know it's. Do you want to? I'll read it verbatim how I have it in my notes. Jaden Ivey, too much for an Ivy school. There you go.
There you go.
And just the bigs, Williams and Edey. I mean, I just think Yale is going to have no answer on the glass here. And I don't like laying points, but Purdue's offense, their defense scares me. But Purdue's offense just should run through this Yale defense like a hot knife through butter, right, Jim?
Yep, I think so. I think this one's analogous to Tennessee and Longwood yesterday, where the underdog doesn't have the size. The shooting that they got through their conference tournament with is tough to repeat. And Purdue can do the same thing Tennessee did yesterday, where they got scalding hot from outside if you collapse too much on their size. So, yeah, I immediately when I saw this one in the bracket, I was like, Purdue's probably going to steamroll them. They're just a team built to steamroll inferior competition.
Here was my pause, guys, and I looked at this game from a couple of different angles. You talk about Jaden Ivey, but Zach Edey is their big guy in the middle, and him to score 15 points was actually plus 102. And I thought it was kind of low because my first instinct was to say, well, Purdue's going to outsize the hell out of this Yale team. Yeah. Then I went and looked at Yale's roster. They got some big guys up front. I mean, this isn't like, you're dealing with a bunch of 6'5", 6'6" guys. They got a couple of 6'8", a couple of 6'10" guys up there. And the thing that gave me pause was, again, it's not like Zach Edey is this monster inside who continually plays with his back to the basket like Kofi does, right? Like, he doesn't play that style of game. So I was a little bit nervous about Yale having not necessarily a advantage inside, but being able to match up with them for 20 minutes. If they do it for a half and it's closer than what I want, I don't want to be chasing this many points in the second half. Like, that was kind of what I had concluded. I lean with Purdue with both of you guys, but it's going to be a pass for me. I don't have any arguments with what you guys have laid out or any disagreements with it, but it was just something that I looked at when I started looking at numbers because, again, full disclosure, I didn't watch a ton of Ivy League basketball this year. They didn't play last year. I had no idea what to expect this year from the Ivy League. So it was a stay away from that standpoint because I can't eliminate the variance. But when I just started looking at Yale and their front line, I go, okay, these guys aren't going to be completely outsized. They might be out-athleted. That's not a word, but you get my point by the guys on Purdue. But I don't know if they're going to be outsized, and that just gave me a little bit of pause.
It's a tough spot for Yale because they weren't supposed to even be in this game. And Jim, you mentioned an interesting point. I think it was during the mega show that we did earlier this week. Just the seeding line for Yale probably was off because this likely was the seed that they held for Princeton, which deserves a 14 seed. I don't think Yale does. And it is an interesting spot for them today. We'll see. I hate laying big points in a tourney game. It doesn't sit well with me, but this is the one that I feel a little more comfortable with just because of Yale's lack of rebounding, prowess and just how athletic Purdue can be. All right, let's move on to the 7-10 matchup, which, both me and Jim are both passing here. And Mark, you're only leaning. And I think that makes sense with this game. This line is weird. Like, Miami should be 4 or 5 point dogs, I think, in this spot, and they're not. And the public's on USC as expected. But Miami's got this weird it factor about them.
Yeah.
They won one of those tournament games in the ACC, was super fluky. And Larinaga, I feel like he's an extremely volatile head coach. But we talked about this game last week too, Jim. They don't have a ton of size, Miami, and USC just bangs you in the middle. And Enfield's a great coach, especially in these tournament games and what they did last year. But this line is tough to figure, I think.
Yep. I had a really hard time with this game. I give a slight coaching edge to Larinaga, and that may not be the popular opinion. I think a lot of people are pretty high on Enfield, and Enfield's been awesome in the NCAA tournament against the spread. Yeah. So I can't discredit that. I ended up picking USC in my bracket, but I don't have a strong enough take to actually really bet this game, which, me, Jared, that's pretty rare for me to say in this tournament.
Yeah, I have USC in my bracket too, but Mark, I think if I were to bet it, and now I'm seeing 2.5s pop up with Miami, I think that's probably how I would play it.
Yeah, and this is going to be a live bet situation for me as this game unfolds. Look, Miami has the better offense, right? They are a better team taking care of the basketball. But what really gives me a ton of pause is USC's size up front and how much of a rebounding advantage that they have over the Hurricanes. And when it's not like a small, it's like 10 rebounds per game, which is so significant enough for me to look at it and go, look, if Miami's missing shots and isn't making them early on, it doesn't build a lead. The way USC can rebound, they're going to just have flat out more opportunities. And I don't think that USC minds even slowing this pace down, especially with their defense and how good it is, that they can grind this thing down. It feels like an under game to me as well. Yeah. But if Miami's going to win this thing, they're going to need to get out early and make shots early, because that rebounding advantage gave me so much pause just as far as a game flow and a game script aspect, right, Jim? I mean, when you look at it that way, if Miami doesn't make shots early and gets out of a groove, USC will build a lead, and their defense is good enough to clamp down that Miami's going to be chasing the whole game, and I don't like that spot. Miami has to play with a lead for them to be comfortable, for them to be able to shoot freely and not have to worry about quality possessions. And if they don't have that early on from USC, the Trojans' defense is too good to clamp down and let Miami get back in this thing.
Right. Yeah. They can really compress defensively, play tighter and pack it in. And then Miami has to make shots. So yes. That's just a challenge for the Hurricanes.
But I mean, Miami is in my bracket. And believe it or not, this is one of these things where I look at it and I go, like, depending their next round matchup, right, which is probably going to be against Auburn. If it ends up Miami doing it, I would take Miami to beat Auburn. But if it's USC, something tells me it's a better matchup for Auburn to beat USC.
Yeah, that is an interesting way to think about this game in terms of the next round. And I've done that in a few instances this year. I mean, this tournament, Davidson being one against Duke, St. Mary's being another one. Just the next future matchups, and then how are you going to bet the teams in this current round, thinking ahead, hey, there might be an interesting dog or favorite situation coming down the road. That is a good point. Couple loose ends to tie up with this game. Miami had a run this year where they won 9 straight. They beat Cuse, Duke, Wake, Penn State, Clemson during that stretch. So they've had hot stretches. They dropped 90 against Wake. They dropped 88 against Cuse. And I know the 2-3 zone is what it is, but they still got to make shots. And that's what they're going to have to do today, make shots with this top 20 offense, which can make shots. Again, they're a top 30 effective field goal percentage team, top 20 in adjusted offensive efficiency. So they have it in them, in their bones, to make shots. Will they fall today? That's what's going to have to happen against this very big, tall, and athletic USC defense. All right, let's move on. Couple of polarizing games coming up here. Let's go, and they're both 6-11s. What do you know? 6-11s were polarizing yesterday, and no surprise, we get 2 very fascinating matchups today. Notre Dame, Alabama. Looks like 4 seems to be the consensus here. I haven't seen a ton of movement off of it, although now we are starting to get just a wee bit of exposure here on Alabama. I'm seeing a 3.5 at -115 at MGM. So maybe they are starting to move this down a little bit, but it looks like Bama is the public play.
Yep.
That makes no sense to me. I thought Notre Dame looked great the other night. Their offense is clicking. Alabama doesn't like to defend, and they can be very erratic from the field. But you do like Bama in the first half. Tell me why.
Because Notre Dame played a 2 overtime game in the Eastern time zone less than 48 hours ago. That's my big reasoning here. I was all ready to take the Rutgers or Notre Dame winner, but I didn't like how that game played out for them here. It's a tough spot. We saw Indiana roll over and die yesterday, and basically a similar situation, and they didn't have to play overtime. So yeah, I'm going Alabama first half. I don't trust them to cover. They did a lot of winning but not covering as a favorite this year. So I don't believe in them full game, but I think they'll get off to a fast start, and then hopefully the Irish will charge in the second half for you, Mr. Zeno.
Well, here's the thing. Okay. So a couple of things here. And this game specifically is why I waited till probably 11:30 yesterday to fill out my bracket, because had Rutgers win this game, I would have won that game. I would have hammered Alabama today because it's just a matchup nightmare for Rutgers against a team like Alabama. Waiting for Notre Dame to win, I had to wait and see if it was Notre Dame, because I think Notre Dame is actually going to win this game today. I even got a money line sprinkle on them. And the one difference with Indiana, Jim, is that this may be one of those cases where them not going to their conference final actually helps them, right? Like they actually had a couple of days rest before they had to go play in Dayton, whereas, Indiana had to go all the way through their conference tournament and play extra games, so they get tired legs. But I agree with you that the late game and the double overtime, a little bit of travel, but maybe it's one of those things where you get an Alabama team, rest versus rust. They haven't picked up a ball in a week plus. It's one of those deals where if they're not making shots early, again, Notre Dame, and again, Alabama's got a size and rebounding advantage, so it gives me a little bit of pause. But, Notre Dame runs a very efficient offense. And if you watch that game against Rutgers, they don't waste many possessions. They're a solid shooting team. They played solid defense. There's nothing spectacular about Notre Dame. I just think they're very, very consistent on both ends of the floor. And Mike Bragg tends to just kind of let his system work game in and game out. And it got him to 23, 24 wins this year. So I like Notre Dame in this spot. I am not going to back Alabama. One of the worst cover teams in America this year, as you talked about, especially as a favorite. They're just not going to get my money. I planned on fading this team as soon as the tournament started because I didn't think they were all that good. They're flashy because they can score, but their defense is terrible. And for a mediocre offense like Notre Dame, maybe above average. I don't want to say mediocre. That's probably mean. But still, that will give Notre Dame a little added edge to get into the high 70s against a Bama team that's defense is just bad.
I'll close with this. This, to me, is more of a fade of Bama than it is a bet on Notre Dame. And the one thing that is a little different for me, because we watched Indiana and St. Mary's yesterday, and that was a very predictable letdown for Indiana because they played a tough game. Then they got travel delays going to Portland, which that made it worse. No travel delays, thankfully, for Notre Dame, at least none that I've heard of. But St. Mary's is a top 10 defensive efficiency team. I think when you're on tired legs, it's harder to face better defensive teams that are going to get into you and make you work harder for your sets. That's not what Alabama is. Alabama's the team that's going to run up and down and shoot a bunch of threes and not really get into you defensively. So I think Notre Dame will have an easier time on offense, even if they are on tired legs, than Alabama did the other night. And again, 3 straight losses, bad loss to Vandy in the SEC tourney. And Notre Dame is a scoring team. Now, could the shots not fall? Sure. But I thought they ran really great sets against Rutgers. They got a ton of easy buckets against Rutgers. Yes. And Rutgers is not an easy team to get easy baskets against. They shot over 51% from the floor against a really good Rutgers defense. So if they play that well with their sets and how organized they are against Bama, they'll shoot above 51% because, again, I think Rutgers is a much better defensive team than Bama. So official plays for me, I'm on Notre Dame +4. Jim's taking Bama in the first half, laying 2. Notre Dame +4 and a money line sprinkle for Mr.
Jared, let me add one more thing in this game, too. Just one thing to watch, turnovers. Alabama has problems taking care of the basketball because of the style that they play. If they get themselves in an 8-10 turnover situation in the first half, Jim, you could be in a lot of trouble if they have trouble holding on to the basketball early. I would just tell you, it's very elementary to say whoever wins a turnover battle will probably win the game, but it's probably a little bit more emphasized in this matchup between these two teams.
We got a question about the total in this game to the over. Let me look at what the numbers are. I didn't look at the total in this game.
153. Huge. My first reaction was to take the over. That was my first gut feeling.
Well, a tie for a reason, right, Jim?
Yeah, the efficiency is going to be crazy in this game. I don't think pace will be very high. I think Notre Dame's going to try to keep it half court after what they had to go through with their struggle of travel. But Bama wants to run. Both defenses are worse than both offenses, so I buy the over there too.
Yeah, I would not want to be sitting on an under ticket in this game. There are some really good under spots, and we'll get to one later, but not this game. All right, this is the stinky line of the day. Our buddy Tim Murray always talks about these stinky lines, and this one stinks. So Texas laying to Virginia Tech, and I'm seeing it go a little bit more towards the Longhorns. I saw 1 yesterday. Now I see a 2 in the market, and I see some 1.5s painted across the board. Circus hanging 2. Listen, I can't knock what Virginia Tech did in the ACC tournament. I was on them all 3 games. I mean, it was an incredible run. But we saw a couple of the teams that had really good runs in their tournament, Iowa being another one, that just couldn't keep it going. And I think the market here with everyone's hammering Tech, I really get scared off of this Virginia Tech train. But Jim, you are unafraid of any of those outside factors, and you think Tech's the right side here?
All aboard, me and the public. We're riding the Virginia Tech train. Let's do it. I just Texas has been a team I haven't really bought into all season. Watching them early in the year felt like they were going to take a while to come together, and then watching them at the end of the year, I still think it's going to take them a while to come together. Like they don't look right to me. Some of the quotes from the press conferences, Beard doesn't sound very enthused by his players' attitudes. So yeah, Virginia Tech, just a team that I like the way they're trending. Texas kind of going the opposite direction, but maybe there's some rest versus rust advantage a little bit here, or rest advantage. Like Virginia Tech, 4 games in 4 days.
Yeah.
Texas bowed out right away, so they've had more time to prep. So I buy that angle too, but I'm rolling with the Hokies. I think they're the better team right now.
Yeah, I'm with Jim. It's either Virginia Tech or pass for me, but I think this is a classic live bet situation. And what I'm hoping for is one of these teams to get out to like a 12-3 lead early and watch the line balloon and then take the other side. Because these two teams are so statistically similar, it's nauseating, right? Like there's really nothing dissimilar about them offensively or defensively. So they match up really well with each other. And if they play to their numbers, I think that you should see a very, very close game. Hence the spread, why is what it is and why the number is what it is. But still, I'm with you. I can't back Texas. They've just been playing such a bad brand of basketball the last month of the season. And Virginia Tech, there's a lot of pause, as you guys have both discussed. I will say there's a contrarian in me that wants to just take the over because this number is so low at 123, figuring both of these teams can get to 2. And I'd be good.
Literally just touch 60. One of them's got to get in the mid 60s and you're good.
So, there's a contrarian in me that says, take the over because everybody thinks this game is going to go under.
To me, this is like an ultimate contrarian play on Texas. I got the money line at minus 115. I'm not going to, go, sing this one from the top of the mountains here. This is just a contrarian spot for a Texas team that is literally at their rock bottom. With Chris Beard calling out the seniors. Maybe that's the way he motivates his guys. I think there is a little bit of, is it up for debate on how good of a coach he is? Because he leaves Texas Tech and Texas Tech is just as good as they were when he was gone. And now he goes to Texas with better talent, better weapons. And I would say Texas Tech had a better year, right? So that to me is intriguing to say the least, but I gotta go with where the stink where my nasal passages direct me to. And this one screams, everyone bet Vatech, please. And I'm not going to bite, but Jim, I would not be shocked if the Hokies kept up that incredible streak from the AC tournament. They were on one, as the kids say, and we were able to capitalize on it last week. But today I'm on Texas. All right, so official plays, Jim's taking 1.5 with Tech. Who knows? Maybe Texas wins by 1, Jim, and we both cover. That would be the goal, and stranger things have happened in the tournament. I'm on Texas money line, laying 15 cents. No play for Zeno, but he does lean contrarian to the over. Good question that our producer Jack just posed to me, and Jim, before we move on to our next game, I'll get it to you. Live betting in the tournament. I've heard Mark mention this a couple times. I am of the belief that I like my favorite live betting spots are high-scoring teams like Bryant Wright State the other night. Slow start, under 16 timeout. Both teams are jittery a little bit. Total drops 5 or 6 points in a very short period of time. And then bang, you hammer that live over after it's dropped and you get a little bit of extra value. That strategy or other live betting strategies, what's your best approach for the tournament?
I don't do a ton of it, to be perfectly honest, and I probably should do more because sometimes when you're watching this many games, you get a feel for what's happening. Like Rutgers Notre Dame was one where I would have live bet the under because they were making so many shots early. And it would have won had it not gone to overtime, or at least some of the live numbers that were out there. I try to see if there's any anomalous results early on, whether it's the shooting or like if the pace isn't matching what I expect, it's really pinballing up and down. Maybe I'll look to take the live over. But yeah, I haven't taken a ton of these, so I wouldn't say I'm a well-versed expert on it. But it is kind of like if something goes against your expectations early, but you think it's fluky, that's when you can jump in.
Yeah. Mark, you agree?
Yeah, I think there's always room for live betting, especially in games where you get a short number, right? You talk about Virginia Tech and Texas. I mean, even Ohio State, Loyola-Chicago. If a lead opens up early,
right? You have to fade, which is hard to do.
Sure.
So Virginia Tech gets out to a 10-0 start. You have to fade that and go Texas, which again goes against everything you're seeing, which can be very difficult.
Yeah, no, and again, it's the one thing you need to do with live betting more than anything is take emotion out of it. Stick to your pregame handicap. And if it's not going the way through the first 3 or 4 minutes of a basketball game, does it look like, and you have to kind of, that's where I think game script really speaks to everything, right? You have to understand game script to in-bet live, because if you don't watch the way the game unfolds compared to what teams do normally, or, whether they're making shots or not. I always think in college hoops, a good classic in-game bet is for a team that just, is shooting 55% in the first half and ends up with a 12-point. That's coming back down, man. These college athletes it's that one game we saw early in the year between Kentucky and Tennessee, when Kentucky shot like 60% for the entire game and like 58% from three. That is the extreme rarity. Usually when teams in college basketball, if they have a great shooting first half, guess what? They come back down to earth pretty quickly in the second half.
Yep. Colorado State, Michigan was the perfect live betting game yesterday. Michigan was getting easy baskets. Colorado State was not. And
that was a great example. And again, I thought that Wright State Bryant game was another great example on Tuesday night. Both teams were brick city the first 4 minutes, and that makes sense. Tournament time, first game. But the pace of that game was just, frantic. And obviously it easily covered the pregame number. The live number I got was, I think the pregame number was in the low 150s. The live number I got was 146. I mean, it went over with like 10 minutes left in the second half. It was a freak out. They're not always that easy, but that's the approach. If you want to live bet these tourney games, you have to remove what you're seeing. You have to take your pregame number, write it down in stone, and if you see a 10-point swing in the first 4 minutes, you have to fade that and go on the other side. That's live betting 101. All right, Chattanooga, Illinois is another 13-4. We thought we were going to get a bunch of 13-4 upsets. Not really the case so far. Arkansas gets home. Providence gets home. UCLA gets home. One last chance for a 13-4 upset. Jim, we've talked about this Mocs team a lot this year. This is a tough spot for them. I'm officially passing on this game. I have Illinois in my ATS contest, but the only reason why is because I think Chattanooga is like the poor man's version of Illinois, with D'Souza up front and Malachi Smith in the backcourt. But I do think the Mocs are live. We've been on them in the SoCon this year. They had a crazy tournament final to even get to this spot, beating Furman on that last second buzzer beater. But I'm not fully sold on the matchup here. But if Andre Curbelo comes off the bench and turns it over 8 times in 8 minutes, you're probably live with the Mocs. But I'm not fully sold on Chattanooga. Try to sell me.
I won't. I'm passing on this one too. I really like this Mocs team. I don't love this matchup. I think to beat Illinois, their weakness is putting Kofi in the pick and roll, moving him around in space. And that's not the Mocs offense at all. They run kind of like a modified swing. It's all ball movement. It's not dribble penetration type of stuff. So that just is what made me hesitate. I'd probably take Chattanooga on the number if I had to, but this is one where I'm really waffling back and forth and haven't even bet it yet. So we'll see if I come up with something before game, but right now it's nothing.
All right, I'm in. Give me the Mocs. Take the 8.5. No reservations. Look, this is a Chattanooga team that's top 100 on offense, top 60 on defense. They are great on the perimeter defensively. Now, that doesn't necessarily hurt Illinois because they'll feed the ball inside to Kofi. But if you're eliminating an entire phase of a game, that to me is always something that I have to look at and give respect to. If they can take away all the three-point shooting or a good portion of it from Illinois. And this is also a Mocs team that is 30th in America in first half points allowed. They only give up 29 points per game in the first half. And that to me is something where I look at this Illinois team in this situationally, guys, like Illinois is either getting bounced today or they're probably in the Elite Eight.
Yeah.
But this is the 1 weak spot that they have, and they're going to have a lot of first game jitters, especially the way they got bounced by Indiana in their conference tournament. That's probably still fresh in their minds. I expect them to be jittery in the first half. Like, I'll bank against this. My guess is this will be close in the first half with Chattanooga, maybe even having a point or two lead at halftime, and then bank on the fact that Illinois won't be able to separate by double digits in the second half. Like, they'll just be able to keep it close enough. That's sort of the handicap that I'm going with here. I like the Mocs getting 8.5. I don't think they'll win the game. I have Illinois in my bracket to move forward, but this is a big number for the Illini to be laying. And again, you look at some of these other 4 seeds and the numbers that they were laying. This is one of the actual bigger ones out there, believe it or not. And that's kind of why I'm fading it.
Yeah, D'Souza Coburn will be a very fascinating matchup. D'Souza he's a wild child. I mean, he is aggressive and he gets up and down the floor. He runs really well for a big. And I think he's a little bit quicker than Coburn, but Kofi's got the beef for sure. So that will be a fascinating matchup to see how that plays out. Malachi Smith is the best backcourt player, SoCon player of the year for Chattanooga. And I think the dynamic between him and Frazier and Curbelo will also be the deciding factor in this game. We'll see if Curbelo comes off the bench. That's been what he's been doing lately. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. If we get good Curbelo today for Illinois, could be a pretty decisive win, I think, for the Illini, because I do think he is the factor to this team.
I think the other thing, Alfonso Plummer, guy who averages 15 points a game. He only had, I think he was 6 points in the game against Indiana. I think he was 2 of 12 shooting. He was awful. And that was part of the reason they lost the game, because he was a complete non-factor. He's like that secondary scorer, really, outside of Kofi, that can change this game offensively. I just like Chattanooga's defense enough to be able to limit these guys. And if they do it for the first 20 minutes, I got confidence they could do it for the full 40.
Illinois is a very polarizing team.
Yeah.
Last year, number one.
It seemed like they're a team that buckles under expectations.
Oh, well, last year's the perfect example. I mean, I believe I did have them in my Final Four last year. Again, my bracket gets fuzzy after the first day usually, but losing the first weekend to Loyola, Loyola was deserving of that win, but Illinois just sometimes when they're facing these teams that they really should win, they don't get the full performances because the talent, I mean, you're talking about a team that has a top 5, top 10 player in the country in Coburn in the middle and a really good backcourt, Curbelo, Plummer, Frazier. I mean, those are all, 2 out of those 3 guys are seniors in the backcourt. Coburn's an upperclassman. They have experience, they have size, they have talent, they play in a great conference. They just struggle at times between the ears, and especially with Curbelo, it just, you don't know what you're going to get. So it makes it a very tough team to bet on or against. Officially a pass for me, officially a pass for now for Jim. We'll see if that changes later, but Mark is sold on the mocks, taking 8.5. All right, another polarizing 11-6 game. What a surprise. Iowa State taking on LSU. I'm going to be contrarian AF in this game, but I do get a CLV award for this one. I bet the over at 125.5. It's now up to 128.5. Does that mean it's going to go over? Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. The CLV awards can be worth maybe the price of toilet paper sometimes, or maybe, I guess, the price of gas, which is going up. But to me, 125.5 felt like a very low number for two teams that Iowa State's like the ultimate buy low on their offense. LSU, I think, has some really good offensive pieces. Obviously, haven't put them together for the full 40 or for the full season. But the Will Wade situation makes me think they're going to be playing open and free. Jim, we talked about this game during the mega preview. I know you want to bet the under here. Have you pulled the trigger now that it's gone up a little bit more since we did that show?
I haven't yet. Still waiting. This is probably one I'll bet right at game time because I think maybe it'll keep creeping up. And then I sort of lean towards LSU too. I think there's kind of like a fade them sentiment because of the coach getting fired and people thinking that's going to affect them like crazy, but I don't think it will. They're still going to defend. They're still going to overwhelm Iowa State athletically. This could just be a weird game where both teams are excellent at forcing turnovers. Neither team takes care of the ball, so you could have a lot of steals,
live ball turnovers, baby.
That's my concern with betting the under is that there could be a lot of easy points via steals.
It's also such a low total, Mark. 125. I know it's gone up now, but 125.5 for an LSU team that, again, they've got dudes. Iowa State, they have one dude. I mean, I do like Brockington. He's a star. But besides that, Iowa State doesn't have a whole lot on offense.
No, and again, this is I'm with Jim. LSU is a team I think a lot of us were looking to fade heading into the tournament until the Selection Sunday brackets came out, and they put them against a team that actually has an offense that's less competent than they are in Iowa State. I mean, that's ultimately what it boils down to. I'll back LSU because LSU's offense, as inconsistent, as erratic as it's been all year long, and even at the beginning of the year, they were averaging like 77 points per game, and then they went to a 9-game stretch where they only averaged 62. Then they were back up in the low 70s again, and then, boom, they fall apart offensively. Will Wade gets fired. It's like, okay, this is an easy team to fade, but guess what? Iowa State's offense is so bad, man. You cannot back that offense at any point in time. Defensively, they're great. The only way they stay in games is by forcing other teams to miss shots and allow themselves to hang around longer. But LSU's got enough firepower here. to win this game by what really is kind of a shorter number than I would have expected at -4. So, yeah, I'm going to back LSU today and lay the points.
All right, so here's how I'm officially playing this. I'm on the over for 1 unit at 125.5. That one was in the bank a few days ago. We gave it out on the Mega Show on Wednesday. I'm also going to do a money line rollover with LSU. And the reason for that is their price to make the Sweet 16 is plus 172. I think it's a very favorable matchup for them in the next round because they're going to outmuscle Colgate. And if it is Wisconsin, can Johnny Davis bounce back on an injured ankle on 1 day's rest? So I think the matchup favors LSU also in the next round. And I'm not sure who they're going to face. If they face Colgate, the money line rollover is probably a bad idea because they're going to be favored against Colgate. If they face Wisconsin, then the money line rollover will likely pay better than the plus 172 to make the Sweet 16. I'm unsure which one is which. So I'm just going to play 1 unit to win like 0.57 units on LSU money line at minus 175. So I've got 2 picks on this game. I got the over 125.5 and a money line rollover initial investment on LSU on the money line. I would play the spread too, but I feel safer about this money line rollover because I do probably want to play LSU in the next round because I think they're going to make the Sweet 16 because nobody has them in the Sweet 16 except for me in my bracket. So hopefully it happens so I can take some credit for it because the rest of my bracket looks pretty busted. All right, so that's how we're playing this game. Zeno's on LSU. Jim leans LSU in the under. We'll see if he gets to the window later on it. And I've got the over and my money line rollover on the Tigers. I like this Tigers team. Eason, Pinson, Days. They've got some weapons. They just were hamstrung by a miserable head coach, and now he's gone. All right, 12-5. There were some 12 upsets yesterday. New Mexico State, Richmond. Are we going to get another one today here with the Blazers? Jim, we talked about this Blazers team a lot during their run in the Frisco Disco. Jelly Walker's the guy, but this Houston defense a little different than what he's going to face or than what he faced down there in that conference tournament for CUSA.
Yep, this is another one that's making me hesitate because of what we saw yesterday, where I was thinking the teams that are more physical nature from the mid-majors would get bullied. And instead, those are the ones that kind of stood up and actually withstood some of the favorites, the New Mexico States, Akron, St. Peter's. So I would say UAB fits that profile. I thought Houston might roll over them with physicality. I'm a little more unsure. So if I'm going to bet this, I might end up taking Houston first half, minus 4.5, and kind of getting rid of whatever could happen late. Jelly Walker could go nuts in the second half. So I still think Houston's the right side, but I'm not as emphatic about it, especially after yesterday.
Mark?
I just think Houston's too good on both ends of the floor. This is an overwhelming matchup here. I think there were reasons as I backed Richmond yesterday that certainly made me realize that 12-5 is still out there. But I just think Houston is too good. They're too complete for me, and I don't think that UAB has the athletes to keep up with the Cougars in this spot. I have very little reservations about Houston covering this number.
Yeah, I was waiting for an 8. I got one yesterday at Win. It's mostly 8.5 in the market, but you can find an 8 if you really look for it. Actually, I haven't checked it since we started the show. Let's see if we've seen any movement. It's the late game tonight. No, it's all 8.5 now. Win moved to 8.5. I just saw it move about 30 minutes ago. So 8.5 painted across the board. I was fortunate enough to get one of the 8s. I'm playing it for a unit. Listen, this Cougs team, they check the boxes. Top 20 offense, top 20 defense. They're coming off 3 double-digit wins in the American. And look how good Memphis looks. I mean, that's a good win over Memphis a few days ago, and Memphis looks legit now. That was a double revenge game, too, which even makes it more emphatic for Kelvin Sampson's bunch. Kelvin's a great coach. They've been down this road before. I think this Houston team, that game against Arizona in the Sweet 16, I think the winner of that game is going to the Final Four. And I think Houston wins today. I think they win emphatically. They've got a true rim protector in Josh Carlton. And I think if Jelly Walker goes off for 40 plus like he did in the CUSA Frisco Disco, then maybe UAB's got a chance to hang here. But I have a feeling Kelvin Sampson with a week to prepare will have a game plan for him. And I think Houston's defense is going to be the difference here. So I'll lay it with Houston. Mark, you're joining me. Jim, maybe we'll take the first half, but officially no play. All right, my favorite pick of the day. So I won't really give much analysis here. I'll wait for POD. Davidson, Michigan State, 10-7. Basically a pick 'em. I think Davidson maybe catching 1.5 points if you find the right spot. This is a really good game. This game has, one of those feelings like the Murray State San Francisco game did last night, where I have a feeling it's going to be an open game, a lot of threes, a lot of wide open, offenses, especially Davidson, who can really roll. But Jim, what are you looking at here with the Wildcats and the Spartans?
Yeah, both teams can really shoot the ball. The percentages back that up. But I trust Davidson more right now. I think they are better at executing offensively. They have more of an established identity of who they want to be offensively. Michigan State's been figuring out their rotation for 30 games now. I don't think it's even settled yet. Tyson Walker might be hobbled, one of their 2-point guards. So there's a lot of little factors that add up to Davidson here for me. I just trust them a lot more. And the Tom Izzo in March, Michigan State March thing has not been true for like 5 years. So I just don't buy that at all.
Forget it. Mark?
Yeah, just like you talked about with Texas, more of a fade against the way they're playing right now than necessarily a play on Davidson. But Davidson's the right team for all the right reasons. But I haven't enjoyed watching Michigan State play. Their offense is falling apart. They're not making as many threes as they were earlier in the year, and I can back Davidson here.
Yeah, these guys are really smart, and I think I'll agree, but I'll save my analysis for play of the day. All right, other bets. Jim, you and I are both in agreement on Colgate catching 8. I was waffling on this game because of the location and the venue, but I go back to what you said about last year's matchup between Colgate and Arkansas. Same team as last year for Colgate, and they just couldn't quite physically keep up for the 40 minutes in that game. We don't think that's going to be an issue tonight, right?
No, I don't think so. Wisconsin has faced, I think somebody had a stat yesterday. I forget who on Twitter, so I apologize. But they faced teams ranked 100 through 300 on KenPom like 8 times this year, and they have never won by more than 8. So wow. I just don't think they're built to blow teams out of this caliber.
Mark, anything for you on Colgate, Wisconsin?
That's my play of the day, so I'll hold off.
Oh, you do have that play of the day. Yep. Oh, wow. Well, look at that. We're all kind of in agreement on that one. All right, quick here on Seton Hall TCU. Jim, you had a good look here on the under. Hashtag Undertaker from now on because you're destroying these totals during the tournament. Great job yesterday. I got lucky with the hook on Boise State, Memphis, but that was a good look. UConn, New Mexico State, that was a stone cold under from the start. So sell me here on this Seton Hall TCU under. I got 129.
Yeah, I think it's going to be slow. I think it's going to be half court. Not a lot of shot making on either side. And then the interior defenses are both elite. Seton Hall in particular. Maybe TCU can get them on the offensive glass. But, yeah, I think this is going to be like 64-60 kind of game, maybe even more low scoring. So, yeah, under 129, I'm in.
Yep, I'm in 129 as well. Mark, we didn't talk about Nova, Delaware, but you do think Nova's got a little bit of defensive-minded against this Delaware team tonight, huh?
Yeah, I mean, look, Delaware is a high-scoring team, and they have a bad defense, and a lot of people are probably going to look to go to the over on that, thinking that Villanova will push the pace. They won't. Remember, these two schools are only about an hour apart from each other, even less than that. Just got to cross the Delaware River and get away from Philadelphia right there into right outside of Newark. But, this is a moment here where Villanova uses their experience to just choke this team out. I don't think Delaware is particularly a great shooting team. And so even though they can score, they score because they can run and they want to play fast. And Villanova rather is good enough to slow this pace down and choke them out from that standpoint. So I like the under between these two teams. Delaware should not get in past 65 in this game is kind of my estimation of my math.
Jameer Nelson Jr. Should be fun to watch him. All right, Jim, I know you got to run. Play of the day before we get you out of here, bud.
Yep, hinted at it earlier. I'm going with Loyola-Chicago. First tip of the day, so we're going to be real invested early on. But I just like the matchup. I don't know. I saw that Key and Young are both playing for Ohio State. It was confirmed that they're available.
That's why the line.
Yeah, but I don't believe that they're going to be full strength. And I liked it either way, with them or without them. So, Ramblers my play of the day.
Good nugget to leave on. Jim, good luck. We'll talk to you, I'm sure, very soon.
Yep. Sounds good. Thanks, fellas.
Yeah, great job today, Jim. Incredible insight as always, man. These shows, I don't know how we've done an hour already. It feels like we've been here for 5 minutes. All right, 3-star plays today on the site. Sam Avallone's got a Nova work spot. So definitely keep an eye on that. I won't give away the farm. Go read about it. It's not the play that Jim just or that Mark just mentioned on the Nova Delaware game. It's a different play. Also an NBA spot, 2 NBA spots actually tonight. Philip Tomic has a look in the Raptors Lakers game, and Hermantis Nida has a look in the Nets Blazers game. Also some wow, there is a it looks like a FA Cup, or I don't know who Chelsea's playing tomorrow in soccer, but there's also a soccer bet for 3-Star today if you're interested in some footy tomorrow afternoon between Chelsea and Middlesbrough. So check that out as well. And some MLS plays. So I see 6 3-Star plays on the site today. So certainly nothing to sneeze over there. All right. Mark, you mentioned Colgate, play of the day. To me, this is a great spot for the Raiders. Sell me on it.
Yeah, going to dip into the Patriot League here and get the most experienced, most senior-laden team in the Colgate Raiders going up against Wisconsin. Look, Colgate's won 15 consecutive games. They're top 50 in the nation in scoring, top 10 in effective field goal percentage. They're the number 2 3-point shooting team in America. A lot of people like Jim Root have likened this game similar to what South Dakota State was against Providence. Here's the difference, though. South Dakota State's defense was terrible. That is not the case for Colgate. They have a very solid defense and a very good one that only gives up 67 points per game. Wisconsin is not built to blow teams out. They don't separate all that well. They play a ton of tight games. That's enough for me to back the Colgate Raiders here, getting 8 points as my play of the day.
Love it. I'm on Colgate too. Jim talked about it as well. Might do a money line sprinkle, but I'm definitely catching 8 with the Raiders today. Love it. All right. I'm going back to the well. Yesterday was successful with a 1.5 unit play for the pod. I'm going to give away another 1.5 unit play today. I didn't feel as strongly about this one as I did about St. Mary's yesterday. I really liked the Gales yesterday. I really like Davidson as well. This is a plus money, or I guess actually, no, excuse me. It's not plus money. It's even money. Plus 100, even money. But I'm going to do 1.5 units on Davidson. So they have elite talent, and I think they're overlooked a little bit because of the conference they play in. But this is a team that has the A-10 player of the year in Brakovich. They've got another A-10 first-teamer in Hung-Jun Lee, and they've got 4 players that shoot 40% from 3. They can fill it up from the outside. They're coming off a really tough loss to Richmond in the A-10 final. Well, we saw how good Richmond is after beating Iowa yesterday. So that's not really a bad loss. And this Michigan State team's just too hot and cold. They rely very heavily on the 3. And the final note on this game that I think is very important, it is being played in Greenville, South Carolina, which is a stone's throw away from campus in Davidson, less than a 2-hour drive. This will be a Davidson home game more than it will be a Michigan State home game. I know Sparty travels well, but I'm confident that Davidson is going to fill up the stands here in Greenville. I gave this out on the Mega Show too, a Sweet 16 future for Davidson at plus 680 because I think Duke is very vulnerable. I will be doing a money line rollover in this case. If we get the 1.5 units today, I'll be rolling 3 units over onto Davidson. Maybe not the full 3. I don't want to hold myself to that, but I'll be rolling over a significant chunk of that to Davidson if they play Duke in the next round. We didn't get to that Duke-Cal State Fullerton game, but it's a no play for me. Mark, anything there before we say bye?
No, I'm going to stay off it.
Yeah, I'm staying off that game too. If I had to play it in the contest, which I am picking all 67 against the spread, I'll take the Titans. I think it was 18 points. Duke shouldn't be laying 18 to anybody. All right, we do have a parlay on the FanDuel homepage today, which is really exciting, actually. That parlay is Auburn, Purdue, LSU, and Villanova all against the spread. Wow. I don't mind it, actually. I don't mind it at all. Mark, what do you think about that parlay before you head out of here?
Big numbers with Purdue and Auburn kind of scare me a little bit, but LSU and Villanova, I think, are good to get home.
All right, that's Mark Zinno. Great stuff today. This is Let's Bet It. I'm Jared Smith. Good luck with the games. You got about an hour to get all your bets in.